Welcome back to History Snapshots, and as you guys know from class today, over the next week we're going to be talking about early farming, or the Neolithic Revolution, or also called the Agricultural Revolution. And though this sounds like an excellent time period in history and a great idea for people, right, because you can have a stable food supply and you no longer have to be like Miss Paquette and chase the moose or whatever you're hunting all over the globe, there are actually some serious down or negative aspects of farming, and that's what the subject of this video is going to cover: the advantages and the disadvantages of farming. So make sure you can answer that question by the end of the video, and also don't forget, make sure you number 1, define all highlighted terms, number 2, answer the questions below, and number 3, write down something that confused you so you can bring it up in class tomorrow. Good luck. Alright, so before jumping into some of the advantages of farming, let's look at where and when this shift started to take place. Because as you guys remember, all the human groups we studied before were hunter-gatherers, meaning they had to pick up and move all of their things to follow their prey. Alright, so this shift started to take place in the Fertile Crescent, which is what we talked about in class today, and it happened between 8 and 11,000 years ago. And what humans started to do is they used agriculture, or the process of using plants and animals to supply food, because they realized it was a way for them to be able to have a steady amount of food instead of rely on hunting the animals. And also, they began to domesticate animals, or make those animals useful for them. For instance, they started to get milk from the animals, or use their furs for clothing, or use the animals to help plow the fields. So this allowed the early farmers to stay in one place. Alright, so let's start talking about some of the advantages of farming like this. So the first thing is there was a surplus of food, or extra food that was stored to feed people at a later time. So now humans could plant a bunch of grain or crops in the Fertile Crescent and take it all, and they could save it for later, which allowed them obviously to have food over long periods of time. In addition, since they had a stable food supply, population started to increase, right? Because they could feed more people at once. Also, they settled the land. They stayed in one spot, so they were able to build better and stronger shelters. Finally, this led to more structure in their society, right? With this stable food supply now, there's structure, there begins to form hierarchies, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. And finally, it allowed people to specialize in labor. And what this means is now people could have specific tasks in societies, because now they didn't have to all go out hunting together. Alright, so think back to that video we watched on the early human unit, right? The whole group of Homo erectus was out hunting because they all needed each other to get food to eat. With farming, you could have some people do some hunting, the rest farm, and others learn specific tasks to help further to develop the society. Though farming had several benefits, it also had several disadvantages for society. For example, number 1, it was way more work, and I know it doesn't seem like it because you think it would be exhausting to chase animals all over the place, and it certainly was, but farming takes a ton of time and effort, especially when humans were not very good at it in the beginning. So that's one disadvantage. Second disadvantage, these farming societies were more susceptible to disease because of the overpopulation and living in close corridors. Also, bad weather could wipe out entire crops and destroy a whole bunch of food supply. In addition to that, they were susceptible to insects, and the diseases that could come from that and destroying their crops. And surprisingly, farming societies also ate less balanced diets. There's evidence from this findings from archaeologists that their teeth were very unhealthy and their stomach were very rotten because of this. They just ate too many plants and not enough meat. So those are some negative aspects of farming that are really important to keep in mind as we move throughout the unit. Alright, so there you have it. That concludes this episode of History Snapshots, but before you X out of this video, make sure you, number 1, define all highlighted terms, number 2, answer the questions below, and finally, number 3, write down something that confused you so you can bring it up in class tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.